I'll just say up front, I'm sort of an AI believer. For the people who are like, it's not coming for your job, like it's coming for your job. It's just gonna give you a better one right after that. What we're going to talk through today is a little bit about Anthropic. Hopefully everyone knows Anthropic is one of the world's leading providers of AI, and if you haven't used it before, you're going to use it today. It is truly amazing what the technology that they built can do. So we're going to talk about where they sit in the market, how they see the world, and where they think AI is going. Then we're going to go really deep on all things data for go-to-market plays. Then we're going to talk through sort of general strategy, content, optimization, orchestration, a bunch of the things around how you bring this all together. And then, as mentioned, Millie is going to take us through a guided workshop with Anthropic. So one sort of update that we should mention as we jump in is Anthropic's already powering ZoomInfo's products today. So if you're a Chorus user and you're recording a call, after the call, within about 7 minutes, you get a summary that tells you exactly what happened on the call, what to do next, et cetera. And it is really important for us to say we've been working on this for years. And the moment we plugged it into Anthropic, I started getting comments left, right, and center like, wow, this is amazing. Like, the world has changed. The work that Anthropic has done to make this experience better in product is already landing with customers. And so we think we're literally in the very, very first innings here, like first batter of the first inning, right? Like, this is going to be a journey. So a lot of the stuff we'll talk about are sort of where we think AI and go-to-market are going to go together.
We really believe that in the next few years, things are going to get weird, things are going to change. We're going to move to an AI-driven economy. It's going to change the way we work and play and the way our kids learn. And we really want to partner with the world's leading organizations and enterprises to deploy generative AI in like responsible, scaled ways. So before we dive too deep into the technology, who are we? We were founded by 7 folks that came from OpenAI. On the screen, you'll see the groundbreaking GPT-3 paper, Language Models are Few-Shot Learners. All of the authors in purple were part of the founding team at Anthropic. And on the bottom right is Dario Amodei, our CEO, who co-invented scaling laws and reinforcement learning from human feedback. So these 7 folks came together. They wanted to create a focused bet on safety and approach model development in a new way that really put humans at the center of it all. Now, Anthropic is an AI safety and research company. We have 3 sort of buckets of safety in terms of how we think about this. The first is our AI assistant, Claude, which has been designed to be helpful, honest, and harmless. What does that mean? Helpful is that it helps users to accomplish their goals across use cases or domains. Honest is that it only shares information that it believes to be true. I'm sure all of you are well aware of the constraints of these systems when it comes to hallucination and kind of eagerly inventing things beyond their worldview. So how can we try to restrict the system and have it say things that it's confident are real and hedge where it's not confident? And then harmless is making sure that it won't cooperate on harmful activities. So this is a really interesting balance to strike, right? You can think of a helpful only model that's like cheerfully able to give you instructions on how to rob a bank. That's not what we want. You can think of a model that's been trained too much on the harmlessness factor, where you ask it like, what are the best bars around Dreamforce? And it scolds you for drinking and says, that's not good for your health. You really shouldn't do that, right? So striking that balance is really important. The second bucket is constitutional AI. This is where you start from a set of principles that are designed to reflect human values. Our initial set were drawn from places like the UN Declaration of Human Rights or the Apple Terms of Service. And the model actually shapes itself, it critiques itself in order to reflect those principles. That's what shapes Claude's personality and gets the behavior that we want without needing a lot of human feedback and sort of human input. And the last bucket is robust against jailbreaks. We're pretty proud of how Claude does against red teaming. So red teaming is where you have a large set of adversarial prompts and you try to break the model in ways to get it to say something offensive or stereotypical or biased. This is, no model is perfectly safe here. There's new jailbreaks being discovered every day, and we work really hard to make our model robust against those. We introduced our latest model, Claude 2.0, a couple months ago. We've been really pleased with the reception. Claude has been known to be better at writing, content creation, conversation, support. We've also made significant improvements in coding, math, and reasoning. It's also twice as hard to get Claude 2 to say something harmful as previous models. Now, Claude is truly multilingual. You can work in it in like French, Portuguese, Indonesian, Korean. We hear a lot of great things, and translation is a key use case for us. Now, what are the core capabilities of Claude when it comes to go-to-market? So here we need to think about how can we empower like sales and marketing teams to focus on selling and meeting their goals and focus more on the strategy and higher level work. So if you think about Claude, it can work across the sales funnel. For prospecting, right? This is when your leads are not there yet. You're trying to figure out your strategy. You want to find those leads. Claude can help. Claude can assess your target strategy, help with your ABM account planning, figure out a positioning framework, and really help you get the download on the prospects that you want to go after, as well as generate personalized outreach content for them. Then with the nurture phase, your leads are coming in. Claude can help you qualify them. It can summarize your past touch points, come up with creative ways to use future touch points in order to move to a proof of concept or sell into your customer. And lastly, for close, you might find yourself in like a competitive bake-off. Claude is great at competitive analyses. Even like when they send over a contract, you can feed it through Claude. It can summarize key points, find loopholes and weak language for you and your lawyer. So really across the spectrum of all the activities your teams need to do, think about Claude as like a financial analyst, a strategist, a content creator, even a legal assistant.
What we're gonna do is spend about 15 minutes sort of diving into the depths of what modern go-to-market means and how we think about defining that before we jump to how AI is gonna help us on this journey. So the first thing I wanna sort of point out is that every part of ZoomInfo is changing because of AI, right? We were a company that was really focused on unlocking insights before, taking data and informing everything from targeting, audiences, personas, playbooks. All of that's changed with AI. The same thing's true for engagement, right? I think a lot of people jump immediately to the use cases around content for AI, and they should. It's amazing at writing, rewriting content, iterating on content. And we think there's gonna be a huge amount of advantages created around orchestration and automation as well to just help your team to run faster. And so when we think about modern go-to-market today, we think about automating across all channels. And so most companies that we talk to sort of live somewhere in the bottom where they have sort of a fragmented data model and they're sort of doing things with channels being orchestrated, but not every time, right? Where we want to help companies get to is to be able to automate the data flows and do it across every channel. And a big part of why they don't is because they've sort of run out of capacity to get to all the things. AI is fundamentally changing that. Now you can get to all the things, and we're going to show you that today. So let's talk about AI and sort of where we are as the fabric of go-to-market. One of the huge things that sort of made itself known to us very early on when we started messing around with Anthropic and others was that we're going to go from a world in which we're just talking about third-party and structured data powering go-to-market to a world in which we're talking about first and third, structured and unstructured. A lot of what you'll see in the prompt libraries that we've put together today are unstructured data directly informing something in real time. And so, if you sort of take a look back, for the last 23 years, right, ever since Jigsaw came out, in 2002, most companies have sort of relied on ZoomInfo, LinkedIn, and other places to get structured data to say, here are the companies we care about, here are the people we care about, here's what we know about them, and then go to market. Starting about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot more work around sort of harnessing all the first-party data that you're generating as byproduct of your product-led growth and self-service to power a lot of that. So combining insights from first and third party data together to get to real meaning of like what's happening at this company. And now this entire bottom of the quadrants is gonna be unlocked, where every single piece of marketing material, job postings, data sheets, content, quizzes, anything that you've ever done before can directly inform the way that you think about going to market for a specific company. And so if we sort of look at a smattering of the things that you all have probably spent your time on, right? Literally, we have some of the best go-to-market practitioners in the whole world sitting here with us. And all of these things take a huge amount of work, and they're sort of scattered across this first and third-party data, structured and unstructured. And our feeling is that almost all of them are sort of a direct use case for go-to-market data. McKinsey has done some research that suggests that marketing and sales is really going to be the first outlet for AI. I think it's super obvious to any of us who've spent time with it that there's just a huge amount of time spent on content creation, data analysis, et cetera, that can be moved into an AI realm. And you can see that the density is still pretty low. So while sales and marketing is ahead of the pack, it's still just like at the beginning stages of becoming a big part of everyone's sort of go-to-market strategy. And the way that we would think about this is I think immediately people often jump to the effectiveness sort of axes of like how much more, the efficiency axes of how much faster can we do the thing. What I think people often lose is it's doing the thing faster at way higher quality than your best person, right? So I'll just say up front, I'm sort of an AI believer. For the people who are like, it's not coming for your job, like it's coming for your job. It's just gonna give you a better one right after that. So I want everyone to think about both vectors of AI gets you to sort of more efficiency, but data plus AI together can get you to real effectiveness. This is where we jump into the workshop. Let me quickly explain a little bit about the premise for what we're gonna do. So what we wanna do is pick a company that everybody sort of has heard of, understands, and that is sort of familiar to everyone, right? So we think there's a version of this workshop for every single one of you, but for grounding it in the sake of an example, we picked a company that everyone's heard of, I think. So raise your hand if you've heard of Workday.
Right.
Awesome. They sell, HCM software, so you can manage all of your people. They also do payroll, finance, spend management, analytics, a lot of stuff around ERP, and they really have a few core personas, right? They sell to finance, they sell to IT, and they sell to HR. And so it's one of the reasons we want to pick them is sort of very clear space, everyone understands it, you know who they sell to. That context is going to be really important as we go into the data deep dive. And so what we're going to do during the AI workshop is take a lot of these public materials, right? Oh, this is all stuff you could find on the web or with our data, and sort of merge everything that's happening in a Workday world with AI to see what we can get to for an output. So that's sort of the premise as we get to it. But first, let's take a deep dive into how we think about the intelligence layer broadly. It's really important to think about the attribute backlog and the set of attributes that are powering your go-to-market. Everyone cares about things like company name, domain, industry, locations, employee count, right? Like table stakes. I'm sure every one of us is using those as enrichment in CRM. Where it gets really interesting is to get to the computed traits and the custom attributes that are so specific to your market that nobody's gonna even sell them to you. You either have to do the math to get there or go and find them on your own. But getting them and enriching your data at scale can unlock an outsized advantage when you're looking at things like account-based insights, targeting, segmentation, content pivots, and beyond. So as an example, if you know the number of people that are in recruiting on a relative basis from one company to another, it tells you a lot about how that company operates. And then you can extrapolate that out all the way down the line. And so when you think about some of these attributes for Workday, we think about things like how modern is the tech stack? How many people do they have in HR? What is the density of integrations that this company has installed that work directly with Workday? Are they hiring in HR and IT? And this would go on and on, right? There are many hundreds or even thousands of these custom attributes that would be really important to Workday. And so, the way that we would sort of think about the flavors or the themes of that data is, there's core company data, right? Like we talked about industry, employee count, vertical, et cetera. Then there's people data, which you can roll up to the account level, which tells you a lot about an account, right? The relative mix of people at the account, where they came from, what tech stack they used at the last place, et cetera. And then, of course, their technographics. What do they have installed? Do they have a competitor? Do they have integration tech that we can directly connect to? And then, of course, signals, which is probably the most important thing on here, is like, what's actually changing and happening inside that company to inform building audiences, the timing of your go-to-market plays, et cetera.
Okay, we're gonna get started. So like Ben said, we were talking about building out that enhanced or supercharged ICP. So I'm just gonna live prompt with us all here. So we're gonna go ahead and copy. We're gonna copy in here and paste in our first prompt. So prompt one essentially is let's define their ICP, right? Let's add a couple of documents in here to help build out that ICP. So I'm gonna pick my prompt one docs and I'm gonna upload those. And then I'm gonna let Claude think and start defining that ICP for Workday. Quick note on the links, those are downloadable. So if you click them, you should be able to click and auto download the documents. You'll see I have mine in my downloads folder already, but this way you can sort of follow along and get those files downloaded to upload to the prompt. As you can see, Claude is starting, right, to build out this ICP, and it's pretty impressive out of the gate. Let's go ahead though, and to Ben's point, right, there's so much data, right, and nuance that we can build into this ICP, so let's go ahead and augment this ICP as a next step. I'm going to add my prompt 2 docs, right? In this prompt, we're gonna add some additional website content that we've downloaded that is publicly available on the Workday website to give some more context. We're gonna let Claude think, and hopefully Claude's gonna help us augment this ICP description. Pretty impressive, right, already? All right, I'm gonna move to my prompt 3 and get ready to input, given that we, right, are running against the clock here. I'm gonna go ahead, and once this is done, again, I wanna augment, right? So what additional files can I add about Workday's products that might build, again, a further nuanced understanding of what Workday does? So I'm gonna add prompts 3 in here, and I'm gonna let Claude think. So in each prompt, right, we're building, like Sandy said, we're building additional context into the description of what an ICP is and what it should consider when it's building it out. We're gonna give Claude a bunch of information here, and then we're gonna like wrap the whole thing at the end to kind of come out with a clean ICP that's more like all right, I can take this to my teams. Pretty interesting, huh? All right, I'm gonna go to the next prompt. In this prompt, we're gonna start to use some of the ZoomInfo data and taxonomy to help us identify, right, some of the technologies and intent and scoops and signals that we should care about related to Workday. So I have the list of all of our technologies in here, and I'm gonna have Claude help me pick out the ones that Workday should care about. And hopefully you can see, I've asked it specifically, like Sandy said, giving it as much context, as much discrete direction as possible. If you have a list of all the technographics, potentially you're a technology company and you're in the list. We want that to not return Workday because we're trying to sell on behalf of Workday. So I've asked it to not include Workday as a tag. Okay, right? Okay. All right, we're gonna get into scoops next. So now we're gonna do a similar exercise, but for scoops. And I have our list of scooped by scoop type in this document from ZoomInfo. Now Claude's trying to reference, right, a ton of context. As we build this, right, Claude is understanding the conversation and ongoing, so there's a lot more sort of data to munch through. Now, as you can see, these are scoop types, so these are categories of scoops, right, based on our taxonomy in ZoomInfo. So let's do intent topics. And intent topics is gonna be really key that we find the relevant ones for Workday because we are actually gonna, from here, build out our intent signal targeting play. So hopefully we get a fairly accurate or believable outcome here. I'm gonna add my list of intent topics that then Claude can choose from and go through a similar exercise. Again, some of the learning moments here, making sure the list only contains terms that are verbatim coming from the input, like little contextual clues like that help you to get a much, much better outcome. Pretty good, fairly similar to the scoop types, likely because our taxonomy between our sort of categorization of scoops and intent on the ZoomInfo side by design is similar, right? So the actual scoop data that would come in underneath that would then be more nuanced. All right. So let's get to our final prompt for this session. What we want to do is bring all of this information together. And what I'd love to get out of this, that then we can be, that can be a take home or something that could be actually actioned on, is let's put all of this information together and develop Workday's ICP. We're going to create sections around personas, firmographics, technographics, intent topics, scoops, and then we have a miscellaneous section. Anything else that they might have pulled out from the nuggets that we provided, it's going to add in at the bottom. So we're starting to get out our personas, our firmographics, technologies, and I can scroll up again as this is going pretty fast, which is great. Starting to see our technographics, the intent topics that we identified, scoops, and some of these miscellaneous pieces, right? Seeking sort of an integrated or unified cloud platform, I think is a great call out, right? It's an enterprise cloud application, Workday. They're looking to synthesize and kind of bring that transformation across the business.
What we're gonna do next is we're going to dive into the world of sort of go-to-market engagement. So the way we think about go-to-market intelligence versus engagement is intelligence is the underlying data foundation. What is all the data? What do we know about companies, people, technographic signals? And the engagement is like, how do you operationalize that and put that into channels and run go-to-market plays? So we've talked a lot about go-to-market plays. How many of you have a centralized go-to-market plays team at your company? Workday does, what they call the demand squad. So a play, the way that we think about a play, I think a lot of people sort of think about a playbook as like a binder they got from some old sales consultant. That's not the way that we think about it. A play is a repeatable, scalable motion that has some unique thing that changes in the world, an audience tied to it, a set of steps that almost acts as a recipe for the play, and then it must lead to engagement over one or more channels. So it's really an end-to-end go-to-market motion. That's how we're sort of defining it for the purposes of this. And one thing that we've done, which is important for everyone to check out, is at zoominfo.com/plays, we've basically published the largest library of B2B ideas that exists as far as we know. So if your team is struggling to come up with new ideas for plays, you should go to zoominfo.com/plays and steal ours, right? Millie and her team have stood up 75 of these motions that are run on behalf of our entire go-to-market team, and they don't do anything. They don't think about the audiences, they don't think about the content. They just stand on the shoulders of this centralized work, and these run every month, no matter what. So when we think about underneath that, so we talked about the anatomy of a playbook. These are all the plays you can run. I think all of us are familiar that a play involves often multiple touches across multiple channels, right? So there's sort of like the different flavors of play, right? You often want to mix up the style of content, the approach that you're taking. And as Gartner and many others say, it takes about 12 different touches to expect a reply. So anatomy of a flow is looking at like what are the component parts to make up an end-to-end go-to-market play across all these different channels. And so if you look at sort of combining the foundational data and the signal data together to create a workflow, then it's about creating a recipe to say, given this scenario or this situation, here's how we're going to bring all this data together, and here's how that's going to inform audience building, segmentation, content pivots directly within the content. And so what Millie's going to show in the back half on the content side of the workshop is it taking all that context and helping to build out content as well. So again, the signal, something changes in the world, you have a recipe of all the different steps, and it lands with an engagement with a customer. One of the things that we've done over the last few months as AI came onto the scene and we realized there's going to be a huge opportunity to scale sort of every play for every company is we went out and built out a comprehensive library of every type of template that we think exists. If you sort of look at the average company's go-to-market effort, there's really like 35 or 40 different unique angles that companies are taking, right? The opening hook's like the attention-grabbing one. The simple signals like, hey, I saw you were on our website, we should chat, right? The bump, which we're all familiar with and probably hate as recipients, right? I have an idea for you. I want to get a referral. There's about 40 of these. And so we've actually built those into the prompts so that it understands the nature of these types of messages and how combining that signal with that type of prompt will produce the right type of message. The other thing we've done is gone really deep on the anatomy of a message. So we'll teach Claude, like, here's how to think about what makes up a really good go-to-market message, right? Often something to get their attention about them at the beginning, some sort of bridge to the core content, a body that explains what you do or why you're emailing, and ideally an open-ended call to action, right? The number of times we see companies send out outbound emails with no call to action at the end is shocking, right? So this is sort of like best practices in terms of thinking about how do you bring all this together. And then, of course, data is going to inform a lot of the different content pivots in that. So we've left some room in some of the prompts to show you how this data foundation can then be plugged into the content to actually get to dynamic insights on a per company or per row basis. And so, of course, this content is then going to flow into all these different places. So when someone lands on your website, what is the nature of the chatbot response, right? We know who the company is if they're landing on the website. We have all this foundational data about who it might be, what they used at the last place, which technologies they've installed. We can directly inform the content here. And what we found is that having this content scale was often a capacity issue. People couldn't get to every version of every content before. Now, as you'll see in this Anthropic demo, we can get to every version of every content. So we can literally write every touch of every play in any tone we want out of the box. This is stuff that used to either take months or just not happen, right? So same thing exists for ads, right? Thinking about ad copy is, it's a really important thing of like, how do you marry the different art with the, data-driven targeting and copy together? We'll show you how to use this data to actually inform how you build your ads. And then, of course, there's going to be all kinds of real-time conversation intelligence and playbooks that are going to exist as well. So because Anthropic is integrated with Chorus, over time, you're going to be in real time able to get these insights piped in and be able to have something specific to say to every company, no matter what they say back to you. And we think this world is really exciting. So if you just kind of review back, the anatomy of a play is all around taking the core foundational data. Who is this company? What do they do? What are all the things happening inside the company? And what are the temporal things that are changing? Building a recipe and then having that outflow into content.
We are moving on to the second part, like Ben talked about. I'm going to essentially cover through all of the prompts that sort of marry with the frameworks that Ben just set up and talk about all the different types of engagement and channels maybe we can create some messaging for. So I'm going to go into prompt 8. I'm just going to copy and paste and add into my text bubble here. I'm gonna hit go. So what I am doing is I'm providing Claude a description of our intent signal targeting play, because that's what I want to build our messaging around for all of these different channels. One of the other things I want you to know, I learned this tip from our Anthropic friends. Demarcation is really important. You can see these tags are telling Claude, hey, here's the prompt, and then here's the description of what I'm talking about, so you have more context to be able to understand and then relate back as I keep going through the prompting. So it's ingesting this information and starting to say, great, okay, here's my understanding, right? I'm gonna go into my next prompt. Again, you'll see the demarcation that I'm using in here. And in this, Ben had talked about, right, the anatomy of the actual like sales flow or sequence. I have a bunch of the descriptions of email 1, email 2, email 3 in the recipe that we would suggest for an email flow that would support an intent signal targeting play. And so I'm going to tell Claude all about those types of email frameworks that I want help producing. So as I go into my next prompt, as you guys watch sort of the understanding unfold, I'm going to get started on developing my actual email cadence. So I want to say using the attributes, so all the data and ICP that we had before, and then also write these details around what the sequence should look like and how it should be structured. I want us to put together some email messaging. And I want you to use the dynamic data, right, that we previewed before around intent topics and technographics and all of the ICP data. Think about that with respect to sort of dynamic placeholder variables instead of filling in the blanks. So these become sort of templates that we could then dynamically personalize by account, which we'll get to in a second. I can tell you 3 years ago when I had a team of 20 people doing a lot of this work, that this would have made our lives a lot easier. I think we would have gotten a lot more sleep. So you can start to see, right, specifically we're talking about an intent signal targeting play and the email messaging within that. So you're starting to see it's inserting the intent topic dynamic variable. It's starting to highlight where you should personalize. It even gets into maybe like, this is a recommendation around some content you might want to dynamically personalize and insert, right? All the way down to maybe some key capabilities that could be dynamic by account that you would want to consider. Pretty sweet, huh? All right, let's get into the next piece. So I talked about that we would actually want to start developing some messaging. And so I'm going to set up this table, and we're going to start with an example of the email messaging, and then we're going to sort of add on the different channel messaging as we go. We're also going to select from a sample of target accounts that Workday might sell to. I'm going to add that sample data in here. And then we're also, as we go through this, you're going to see that we're going to speak, or we're going to ask Claude to specifically speak to a VP of HR. So Claude has a ton of information it's recalling right now, right? Like we have given it data, strategy, and ICP. We've asked it to understand sort of our email strategy, right? The play. So we'll let it munch. So you can see it's picking out 10 companies, and then it's writing to those companies, right? So we're starting to build that first hook email. Now, what if we also wanted to use phone as a channel, right? What if we wanted to write some call scripts that were specific to each of these companies? Let's try and see if Claude can add in call scripts as a column. Small Easter egg, I added that there should be a funny joke in some of these, so we'll see what we come up with. There's our call script, great. So you guys can start to see, maybe there's a little joke in some of those. And as it's working, right, we're starting to add, to this messaging output. The jokes are okay. All right, let's go ahead and think about if we were going to write an ad, right? And as a marketer for the last 10 years, and only now in go-to-market strategy, officially as of this year, I have spent a lot of time in my lifetime building ad copy. And the fact that I can do this at scale is absolutely blowing my mind. Nice. So you can see it's adding the ad copy in. So we've got our email, we've got our ad copy. If any of you have worked with marketing teams, I'm sure, or are on a marketing team, you know that normally the development of this takes some time. And this is just 10 10 accounts, but if you had a target set of maybe 10 or 20 or 50 or 100, right, you could go ahead and make these really dynamic very quickly. All right, we're gonna get into chat. If you recall, when we started the prompt around sort of setting up the context around the intent signal targeting play, one of the things that we said was we wanted to specifically target the VP of HR. One of the beautiful parts of having this all in this text conversation is that now that we've sort of developed out all of this messaging and content from the perspective of we're gonna target that persona, one of the things that you can now do is say, okay, great, I want all of this same information, but I want it for my other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 personas. And again, the content pivoting around that is an incredible, incredible efficiency gain for any team. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna ask Claude to get the same table of content, but I want it, and I also still want it for our intent signal targeting place, so same place, same context, right? Same signal, but I wanna target the VP of finance. And so we'll see it hopefully pivot around and actually change up some of the content. All right, and so once we go through and pivot this and hopefully have that sort of final aha moment here, hopefully your brains are starting to buzz around like, great, how could I do this? How could I use this with my team? What would this look like to do sort of at scale beyond just 10 target accounts, et cetera? I'm gonna pass it back to Ben when this loads, and he's gonna wrap up and kind of talk about some of those next steps and action items, tactical takeaways, right, for you all, for your teams.
So we've gone from zero context at the beginning to here's what the company does, here's website content, here's job postings, here's intent topics, here's technographics, here's signal data, now here's persona data, now let's get email copy, ad copy, chatbot content, case studies, right? It's incredible that from a sort of standing start, it was able to get to this many things. And so one thing I want to just point out is this is clearly like mocked up on, or this is done in production on the sort of like public version, but with your APIs on your back end, your engineering team can do amazing things with Anthropic. I think our biggest call to action for you all is to think about what's the version of this that you can run at your company.